Gen Z and the future of human intelligence. We are living in the most technologically advanced age in human history. We carry the power of the entire world inside our pockets. With a single touch, we can access more information than our ancestors could gather in an entire lifetime. We are connected to everyone, everywhere, all the time. And yet, there is a strange and uncomfortable truth we rarely talk about. Despite all this progress, something fundamental inside the human mind is quietly deteriorating. This video is not about gadgets. It is not about artificial intelligence. It is not about social media platforms. This video is about you, about your attention, your thoughts, your emotions, your ability to think deeply in a world that never allows silence. It is about a generation that has never known life without screens. That is Generation G, the most connected generation in human history and perhaps the most psychologically exposed. For the first time, scientists are saying that human intelligence may not be increasing anymore. Instead, it may be declining. They call it brain rot, a cultural condition where the mind is constantly overstimulated but rarely engaged, flooded with information but starved of understanding. At the same time, powerful digital systems are learning how to influence human emotions, manipulate opinions, and engineer anger for profit. They call it rage bait, that is, content designed not to inform you but to provoke you. So, the real question is not how smart our machines are becoming. The real question is how conscious we are remaining. Are we using technology, or is technology slowly using us? Are we still thinking independently, or are our thoughts being shaped by invisible algorithms? Are we in control of our attention, or is our attention being auctioned in the global marketplace? This information is a journey into the hidden psychological reality of our digital age. It is about the future of Gen Z, but more than that, it is about the future of human intelligence itself. Because the greatest revolution of the 21st century is not happening in machines, it is happening inside the human mind. We are living in an age that calls itself the most advanced in human history. Yet, we must ask a deeply uncomfortable question. Are we truly becoming more intelligent, or are we merely becoming more connected? Never before has humanity had access to such enormous quantities of information, such powerful tools of communication, such sophisticated machines, and such instantaneous global networks. And yet, never before has humanity appeared so distracted, so restless, so anxious, and so mentally exhausted. At the center of this contradiction stands the youngest generation of our time, Generation G, the first generation to grow up entirely inside digital reality. Unlike previous generations who adapted to technology, Gen Z was born into it. Their nervous systems, attention patterns, emotional habits, and even sense of identity have been shaped by screens, algorithms, notifications, and endless streams of content. This makes Gen Z not only the most technologically empowered generation in history, but also the most psychologically exposed. For most of the 20th century, scientists observed a steady rise in human cognitive abilities, a phenomenon known as the Flynn effect. Each generation seemed to be more capable of abstract reasoning, problem solving, and critical thinking than the previous one. Education systems expanded, literacy rate increased, scientific thinking became widespread, and the human mind appeared to be evolving upward. But around the 1990s, this trend quietly began to reverse. Researchers across different countries started noticing that younger generations were no longer outperforming older ones in cognitive tests. In some cases, they were doing worse. This reversal has now been recognized as the reverse Flynn effect, and it signals something deeply disturbing. In an age of infinite information, human thinking itself may be weakening. By the early 2020s, scholars and cultural analysts began using a new term to describe this condition, that is, brain rot. Not in a medical sense, but in a cultural and psychological sense. A slow erosion of attention, depth, memory, patience, and reflective thought caused by constant digital stimulation. Brain rot is not caused by lack of knowledge, it is caused by excess noise. The human brain is being flooded with fragmented, sensational, emotionally charged, and often meaningless information at a scale never experienced before in history. Social media platforms, video feeds, algorithmic recommendations, and artificial intelligence systems continuously inject stimuli into the mind. There is no silence anywhere, no mental space, no boredom, no waiting, no time for thought to settle. The mind jumps from one stimulus to another, from one clip to another, from one emotion to another, without ever resting long enough to integrate experience into understanding. Gen Z does not suffer from ignorance, it suffers from cognitive overload. The result is a generation that knows many things but understands very little, sees everything but reflects on nothing, reacts to everything but contemplates almost nothing. The greatest illusion of our time is the belief that technology is neutral. We often say that technology is just a tool and that it depends on how we use it. This is a comforting idea, but it is also dangerously naive. Technology is never neutral because it is always embedded in power structures, economic systems, and corporate interests. The dominant technologies of our age, social media platforms, search engines, artificial intelligence systems, recommendation algorithms, are not designed primarily for human flourishing. They are designed for profit. Their core business model is simple and brutal: capture human attention, convert it into data, and monetize it through advertising, behavioral prediction, and psychological influence. In this system, the human mind is no longer treated as a sacred space. It is treated as a marketplace. Every click is tracked, every emotion is analyzed, every preference is recorded, and every weakness is exploited. This has created what is now called the attention economy, where the most valuable resource in the world is not oil, not gold, not land, not even data, but human attention itself. Platforms compete aggressively for time, focus, emotional engagement, and psychological dependency. Algorithms are optimized not for truth, not for wisdom, not for understanding, not for engagement. And engagement is driven most effectively by stimulation, novelty, controversy, fear, desire, and outrage. This means that the digital environment is structurally biased toward extremity. Calm content does not spread. Balanced views do not go viral. Nuance does not trend. What spreads is what shocks, what angers, what excites, what terrifies, what provokes. Over time, this environment trains the human nervous system to crave intensity and reject depth. Silence becomes uncomfortable, slowness becomes boring, complexity becomes exhausting. The mind begins to prefer quick dopamine hits over long intellectual effort. In this context, a new and deeply dangerous phenomenon has emerged known as rage bite. Rage bite refers to content that is deliberately engineered to provoke anger, outrage, fear, and emotional polarization. With the rise of artificial intelligence, rage bite has become more sophisticated, more targeted, and more psychologically precise. AI can now generate fake videos, manipulated speeches, deep fakes, fabricated news stories, and emotionally charged narratives that feel real but are entirely constructed. These systems can analyze user behavior and serve content that specifically triggers individual psychological vulnerabilities. A person prone to fear will receive fearful content. A person prone to anger will receive provocative content. A person prone to insecurity will receive comparison based content. The goal is not to inform the user. The goal is to keep the user emotionally engaged because emotional engagement generates profit. RageBite does not simply misinform, it reshapes the emotional architecture of society. It creates a culture of permanent outrage where people are constantly angry about something, constantly reacting to something, constantly fighting imaginary enemies, constantly trapped in cycles of emotional stimulation. This has profound psychological consequences. A mind that is continuously exposed to anger cannot think clearly. A society that lives in permanent outrage cannot build stable institutions. Emotional arousal reduces critical thinking, weakens empathy, and increases tribalism. People began to see the world in simplistic binaries: us versus them, good versus evil, friend versus enemy. Nuance disappears, dialogue collapses, reason gives way to reaction. In such a situation, manipulation becomes easy and mass psychology becomes highly controllable. This is not merely a cultural issue, it is a new form of power. In the past, control was exercised through violence, law, religion, or direct political authority. Today, control is increasingly exercised through psychological influence, narrative engineering, algorithmic filtering, and emotional manipulation. This is not physical colonization, it is psychological colonization. Gen Z is being colonized not at the level of territory but at the level of attention, desire, belief, identity, and self perception. Young people are subtly taught what to want, what to fear, what to admire, what to hate, and what to consider normal. Without realizing it, their inner world is being shaped by invisible systems they do not understand and did not choose. One of the most tragic aspects of this situation is that modern education has failed to prepare Gen Z for this psychological battlefield. Education systems have become highly technical but deeply mechanical. They focus on marks, grades, exams, credentials, and employment, but they largely ignore consciousness, critical thinking, emotional intelligence, media literacy, and philosophical reflection. Students are trained to memorize, reproduce, and compete, but not to question, analyze, or understand the deeper structures of society. They learn how to use tools, but not how to examine the systems behind the tools. They learn how to code, but not how algorithms shape behavior. They learn how to communicate, but not how narratives manipulate perception. The result is a generation of highly skilled individuals who are intellectually equipped but psychologically unarmed. This creates a paradoxical figure, the educated but unfree mind, a mind that can operate complex systems but cannot recognize manipulation, a mind that can process data but cannot interpret meaning, a mind that can consume massive content but cannot construct coherent, a mind that cannot construct a meaningful data, a mind that can perform tasks but lacks inner autonomy. Such minds are highly productive but easily programmable. They function efficiently within systems but rarely question the systems themselves. This is perhaps the most subtle form of domination in history, not control through force, but control through convenience, stimulation, and comfort. If the current trajectory continues, Gen Z faces several long term risks that go far beyond economic challenges. Cognitive decline is one of them. This does not mean lower intelligence in a biological sense, but weaker attention spans, poor memory retention, difficulty with long texts, and reduced capacity for deep analysis. Emotional fragility is another risk. Rates of anxiety, depression, loneliness, and social comparison are already rising sharply among young people worldwide. Digital life creates constant performance pressure, endless comparison, fear of missing out, and fragile self esteem based on external validation. Identity itself becomes unstable, shaped more by online feedback than by inner values. Political manipulation becomes easier as emotionally reactive populations are more susceptible to propaganda, misinformation, and narrative engineering. And perhaps most dangerous of all is existential emptiness, a sense of meaninglessness, purposelessness, and inner disconnection that no amount of entertainment can fill. Yet, despite all these dangers, Gen Z also carries immense potential. This generation is more aware of mental health than any previous generation, more sensitive to social injustice, more open to diversity, more connected globally, more creative in expression, more capable of collective action. The same technologies that can enslave consciousness can also awaken it. The same networks that spread misinformation can also spread awareness. The same platforms that manipulate emotions can also mobilize empathy and solidarity. The future of Gen Z is therefore not predetermined. It is not written by algorithms alone. It will be decided by the level of consciousness this generation develops about the systems shaping its mind. The real revolution of the 21st century is not technological, it is psychological. It is not about faster machines, smarter software, or more powerful artificial intelligence. It is about whether human beings can remain mentally sovereign in a world of digital influence. It is about whether attention can be reclaimed from algorithms. It is about whether thinking can be slowed down in a culture obsessed with speed. It is about whether silence can be restored in a world addicted to noise. It is about whether meaning can be rebuilt in a world saturated with information. The greatest threat to Gen Z is not unemployment, not competition, not even economic inequality. The greatest threat is the loss of inner freedom. The generation that cannot control its own attention cannot control its own destiny. A generation that cannot think independently cannot build independent futures. A generation that cannot distinguish truth from manipulation cannot create genuine democracy. The most valuable skill for the future is not coding, not communication, not entrepreneurship, but consciousness itself. The ability to observe, reflect, question, resist, and choose deliberately. In the end, the future of Gen Z is not a question of technology. It is a question of awareness, not a question of machines, but of minds, not a question of data, but of depth, not a question of connectivity, but of clarity. Either Gen Z becomes the most conscious generation in history, capable of mastering technology without being mastered by it, or it becomes the most controlled generation in history, living inside systems it does not understand and cannot escape. The choice is not external, it is internal, and it begins not with changing the world but with learning how to protect and cultivate the most powerful technology of all, the human mind. So, it is a powerful, crisp, and emotionally